So I want to talk about bargains and where to get them, and I'll be asking you if there's anything you're looking for and also telling you what I know, or at least as much of it as I can fit into the time. I just want to define, first of all, what I mean by a bargain, because what I don't mean by a bargain is something which is just cheap in absolute terms. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a bargain. It just means it's not much money, and quite often that means it's going to fall apart and it's rubbish. What I mean is quality and value. And what's really interesting right now, and why you lot are in the driving seat, although you may not realise it, is that because we have a recession, retailers are having to work very, very hard. What's also interesting is that just because we have a recession, the consumer hasn't become less aspirational. You know, we might not feel very rich, but in relative terms, we've all become used to a really good standard of living over the last few years. And so what people are really saying is, you know what, there may be a recession, but I'm not prepared to compromise. I still want what I want. I just don't want to, or cannot afford to, pay as much for it. But the good news is that you don't have to, because right now stuff is relatively cheap and you can strike a fantastic deal. So in addition to anything that I tell you today about where to go to get good deals, just always remember that right now you can actually have your cake and eat it. You know, people say that I'm terribly cheeky and I always make an offer when I go and buy something. I never accept the price that's there. Why should you? What's the worst they can do? So let's kick off with the bedroom, very important place. Anybody looking for beds at the moment? Okay, fantastic. One of my all-time favourite bargains, I don't know what style of bed you're looking for, but we'll get onto that in a second, is from a company called Anderson Bradshaw. And they are a very interesting example of where one has to look for bargains, because, you know, finding bargains just require a little bit of effort. There's naught for free in life. You will find some bargains on the high street, and we will address them, but the majority are what I call off-piste. You have to go and search a little bit. And quite often, you'll find bargains in places on industrial estates, trading estates, hidden away in warehouses, sometimes in agricultural barns, more of which later. And Anderson Bradshaw is on an industrial estate in Midhurst in West Sussex. Now, you wouldn't know they were there. You simply wouldn't find them unless I told you about them. But they're there, and they're crafting traditional, mostly traditional, some contemporary, but mostly traditional furniture. And I discovered them several years ago. And they make the lit bateau. You know, those lovely double-ended mahogany beds that you see dressed in linen in the magazines, looking very romantic and pretty. They have a 6 foot by 6 by 5 foot handmade solid mahogany lit bateau for £325. That is a bargain by anybody's standards, because they haven't compromised. I mean, that really is quite something. And they do all sorts of furniture, but they are terrific. Also for beds, there's Taurus beds in London. Anybody looking for children's beds? If anybody wants children's beds, there's a company called aspace.co.uk. And I've recently been looking for bunk beds for my 2 sons. And I've looked at all the companies that make bunk beds, and A-Space are by far the best. They're about 30 to 40% cheaper than anybody else. I discovered an absolutely fantastic website recently called, bit of a mouthful, and it's also a terribly naff name, qualityfurniture4u.co.uk. And the 4 is the number, not the word. So I apologise for ridiculing them in public, but I think they really should have tried harder with the name. However, they have hundreds, if not thousands, of items of furniture on this website, divided into styles. So Gustavian furniture, that's sort of, you know, the Swedish look, the French-style furniture, contemporary furniture, Blackwood furniture, the whole thing. They've got all the different major styles that you'd imagine. That stuff is at least 60% cheaper than I've seen it anywhere else. I bought for my own bedroom recently a silver velvet chaise longue, because I was doing a sort of boudoir thing, for £200, which is really good value, because you would expect to pay about 500 or 600 for that. It was really nice quality. So qualityfurniture4u.co.uk, absolutely fantastic. Kitchens. Anybody interested in kitchens? Good. Okay, well, the best kitchen company I've ever come across, if you just want to deal with what I call a traditional kitchen company and get fantastic service as well as great quality and value, is the Kitchen Discount Centre, and that is www.kdcuk.co.uk. The chap who runs it is called Carl. You can always say I sent you. And they have hundreds of kitchens, literally hundreds, any style you can think of. He's at least 30% cheaper than anybody else. But what really does it for me is the quality of service, because with a kitchen, there's so much going on. There are so many details, and you've got to get it right. I think he's absolutely amazing. There's another company based in Rotherhithe, rather impossibly called FEET, which stands for Far Eastern European Trading. And this is a very interesting company because it deals in bathroomware, which we'll get onto in a second, but also tiles and granite. What's interesting is that they import most of their stuff from China. Now, you've got to hand it to the Chinese these days. They're doing most things faster, better, and cheaper than anybody else in the world. They just are. They have just completely got their act together, and they're wiping the floor with the rest of the world. This guy, Ray, who runs FEET, can actually sell you pre-cut lengths of granite worktop, 3 meters by 60 centimeters, which is the typical depth that you'd want to have. He'll sell it to you for 160. Now, okay, there is a downside in that it's pre-cut, but there'll be many people with a standard-sized kitchen for whom that works, and that is a Billy bargain, if you ask me, because the quality is good. And I have to say that these places I'm talking about, I have personally, if I haven't bought from them, I've actually been there and seen them. So I am talking about something that I have experienced at first hand. What Ray also sells, and in fact what he sells most of, is bathroomware. Now, you know those huge jacuzzis and those walk-in steam cabinets that have become so popular where you can have a sort of party for 12 and room left over, all that stuff? He sells all of that, plus a lot of very contemporary bathware, from wooden baths to the beautiful freestanding tubs. Really, really gorgeous stuff. Glass basins. He sells glass splashbacks. His stuff is 70% less than the high street. 70% less.